Um, I'll tell you my story. But before I do that, just a quick survey. How many of you were born outside the United States? How many of those who were born outside the United States think that that's an advantage? 2. I think it is an advantage. I think that you've been exposed to different worlds in today's environment. We are no longer a closed society. The more people you've been exposed to different cultures, it helps you. It gives you an edge over the people that were born here. I born in a small town, 40,000 people, rural Ukraine, very few cars, mountains. I went to school on skis. Had no indoor plumbing until age 8. Age 15, my parents and I left Russia. We went to Italy. All of a sudden, I'm in Rome. I see all these wonderful things I've never seen in my life. We had $200 in our pocket. I'd like to go and see the museum. I'd like to go and travel. My father says, great, but we have no money. How are you going to do this? He says, if you can make some money, by all means, go ahead, do it. So that was really my first interaction with entrepreneurship. Those of you who are familiar with Italy or seen it on TV, there's a lot of cafes outside. A lot of people having dinner, but more importantly, drinking coffee outside in cafe. And they sit there and they spend a lot of time. I realized that there's a lot of people that appear to be on dates, boy, girl, sitting outside in a cafe, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes. So I said, you know what? If I can buy cigarettes by a carton, and I approach a guy who's there with a girl, and I offer to sell him cigarettes right then and there, the chances are, with so many people in a cafe, someone is out of cigarettes. The pack of cigarettes, I really don't know what they cost today, but let's say if it's $4. And I'll tell him right then and there it's 10. Is he, in front of his girlfriend, is he going to negotiate with me? Not macho Italians. Highly unlikely. If I sell it to him cheap, that's not impressing the girl. So the higher I go, the more impressive, the happier the guy is, because I've given him an opportunity to show how much he likes it, that he's willing to shell out back. And the guy says, how much? You tell him $10. He looks at you and says, you son of a gun, But, and he reaches and he gives me money. So that was my first interaction with the entrepreneurship. And I did make enough money to go around Italy and see some of the sites. I came to this country, didn't speak English at all, started delivering groceries, collecting. At that time, a tip was 25 cents. If somebody gave you 50 cents when you delivered groceries, that was a major event. And you remember that guy. So I remember my first Zenith 19-inch black and white TV was $139. That was my first acquisition in this country because I want to watch TV so I can learn English. And quite frankly, I learned a lot of my English that I learned was initially from watching TV. I got through school somehow, through high school, saw opportunity to work in the jewelry business. And they paid by the piece, and I was young, and I was fast, and I was handy. So I started making rings. And because I was fast, I started making a lot of money. And then I looked at the people standing next to me, and there was a guy, 40 years old, doing the same thing as I was doing, except slower. There's a guy next to him who was 60 years old, doing the same thing as I was doing, except much slower. So I'm saying, that's me. 20 years from now, 40 years from now. I don't want to do that. The first year after I was done working, I went, there's this thing called income tax in this country. So they gave me a form called W-2. I don't know what to do with this. So I asked my friend, says, there's an accountant over there, just go and see him, he'll prepare your tax return. And the guy takes a look at this form, starts filling it out. 10, 15 minutes later, he says, here you are, $75. I'm there polishing these rings. I think I'm making good money. To make $75, I have to work, half a day. You know what? I told my friend who was working there, I said, next year, don't give it to him. Come to me. I'll do a good job. Why not? I didn't have enough money to go to college full time. But because this job was in Manhattan, I went to Baruch College, also part of CUNY, and continued working during the day and went to school at night. And that is what really served as an entree for me to become an accountant. Baruch had a very good accounting program, and I decided to major in accounting. It was a little bit different environment than today. Today, everyone is interested in diversity and hiring different people from different backgrounds. Back then, it's not that long ago, but people were interested in homogeneous, you had to fit that WASP mentality, these big firms. I hardly spoke English. I spoke to my professor, and he says, you know what? Here's a guy I know, why don't you see if you may be interested in an internship program? The guy really didn't want to see me, but because he was a friend of the professor, as a favor, he said, okay. I walked in and I said to him, don't pay me anything, I just want to work here. So he said, you know what? I'm not offering you a job. I'm offering you a 2-week project. After 2 weeks, I don't need to tell you that you are gone, you're gone. When I walked out of that room, I said, okay, I got a job. Because there was not a chance in the world that guy wasn't going to hire me after 2 weeks. A big 8 accounting firm at that time, partners were considered to be gods. I mean, you didn't look the guy straight in the eyes. You didn't approach him. They were really royalty. I showed up at work at 7 o'clock. I really don't remember why. The halls were empty. There was one partner, the head of international tax division, that was in. All of a sudden I see him wandering the halls. He sticks his head in, he doesn't know who I am. He introduces himself, says, listen, I need some numbers added up. Can you do that for me? The head of international is actually talking to me. Wow. I dropped what I was doing, went and did some work for him. I did the same thing the following day. Sure enough. Oh, you're here. But now he was a little more friendly. Hi, you're here, great. You know what, I have something I need done. He was an early person, and there was nobody in the office. So when he had grunt work that partners did not want to do, boring work, he was looking for someone to do it for him. I provided a solution for him. He needed work done. I was there at the right time. No one else was there. In life, what you will find is that things even out. You do something for someone, they know that you've done something for them. Human nature is that they will attempt to repay you, even without asking. On the contrary, if you ask, if there's a sense of entitlement, hey, I work for you at 7 o'clock, do I get paid for this? That probably would have said, you know what, fine, put in for a half hour overtime, and he no longer owes me anything. I'd much rather that he owed me. For that person to be in debt to me is worth a lot more than a week's pay. So I never asked for anything. I was just there for him. But human nature is such that he felt guilty. So one day he walks in during lunchtime. He says, you know what, I'm going to meet an interesting client. I thought that, you with your international background would find it enjoyable to meet with him. Why don't you join me for lunch? I went. I met a German guy who was the treasurer of Citibank. We had lunch. They talked. I listened. At that age, at that time, you don't really, unless you ask, you don't participate. But I met this guy, and we formed a relationship. Today, I kid him. I said, what in the world would possess you to ask for an 18-year-old kid to be working on your matters? Because he was the treasurer of Citibank. He could have had anybody. He asked for me. And he says, I don't know, I really don't know, but there was something there that I thought that you cared. It really doesn't matter what you do. Whether you do accounting, internet, you must love what you do. You can't fool them. People see right through you. Unless you care about the client, unless you love what you do, you simply will not be successful. What's the saying? If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, something to that effect. It doesn't matter whether you're selling jewelry, whatever it is that you do, if you are not enjoying doing it, look elsewhere. And it doesn't matter what you do. If you are the best at what you do, you will be a success. If you're the best fireman there is, you're a success. It doesn't matter which profession, whether it is a profession or business. Success is defined by, are you happy with where you are in life? Are you achieving your potential? Is your status line, not just financially, but in terms of family, friends, are you where you want to be? And if the answer to that is yes, then you have succeeded. I became the youngest manager ever at Peat Marwick, and at age 24, I was running a major division. You cannot do this alone. You need a partner. You need, I call him a rabbi, a priest. You need someone who takes care of you. You need someone who will give you that push and take them with you. So always pick a guy that you work for, or gal, who is successful. You will ride their coattails. They will not be afraid to have you assist them, because your success enhances theirs and theirs enhances yours. Don't be afraid to give that person full credit. Don't look for credit yourself. Whoever it is that you're working for, they know who gets the credit. Again, I knew that that person is in debt to me. And as I said before, I like when people owe me. It's a good place to be. I'd much rather that people owed me than I owe them. When I became a senior tax manager at Peat Marwick, within 2 years, I was up for partnership. And there again, I had to make a serious decision in my life. Do I want the big corporate environment of 2,000 people and being subject to the whims of these people, or do I want to be in a much closer environment where I can control it? There is no right answer. The answer is different for most people. For me, I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. I wanted to be local. When you are in that job in international tax, the chances are overwhelming that over the next 15 years, I would have been assigned to many other countries around the world, and I simply didn't want that. I chose to leave a very, very successful career behind. People could not believe that I would leave such a great job, and went from the single largest firm in the world to the smallest possible, which is one person. I opened up my first office. It was at 230 Park Avenue. It was the Helmsley building. And I remember my father saying, "Well, you nuts? You don't have a client, but you are opening on Park Avenue?" And that is something, again, that that I think you can take something from. Work for people who have money. You want to do good for society? Volunteer. Do that work for free. But if you separate your career from philanthropy. So if you're going to work for people who can pay you well. People who use accountants on Park Avenue can pay well. I never look back. My business became very successful. Today, I do the same thing. We still I still do international tax. I intentionally kept my firm small. I wanted to be in touch with my clients. I wanted to know what's going on. I like to have my hands in it. I'm not a good administrator. I intentionally did not become big, but instead I built up an incredible group of clients. So, famous people, Joan Collins, Eartha Kitt, corporate names like Citibank, Revlon that I mentioned to you before, they were my clients back then. They're still my clients. They don't leave you. You see, what ends up happening is that when people know that you care about what you do and you do good for them, it doesn't matter. These people found ways of going from using the largest firm in the world to using the smallest firm in the world because they liked what you did for them. Bottom line on all of this is that, find your own way. There are many ways of succeeding. The principles are all the same. Care what you do, enjoy what you do good for the client. Put your client first. When I refer to clients, I don't talk about them. I don't talk about him or her. I talk about us. And the first agent says, are you part of that? I said, no, us is the team. It's not client, IRS, accountant. No, it's us and you. It's so inbred in me, so part of me, that it's natural. And the agents recognize that, and they take a step back. I see that they deal differently with me in that approach. I see with other accountants, they start talking about the client, you know, like it's a third entity, you know, like somebody out there. With me, they don't do that because, hey, it's us. I believe that, you know, no matter what you do, if you apply these principles, you guys will be very, very successful.